The best example to look at when we're asking ourselves who is our neighbor, who is our brother, is again to look at Jesus. Jesus gave us a parable of a good Samaritan, which is just a wonderful parable that even non-believers hold on to. And simply the parable, as most of us are aware of, Jesus was explaining how there was a gentleman who was robbed and beat up. He was physically abused, left for dead. We can turn on our TV and hear stories like this every day. But what's unique is that today, if we witness someone being beaten or robbed, we go out and help them. And I don't mean just, hey, 911. Jesus tells a story of a good Samaritan, someone who didn't even know the person that they were going to help. This person was robbed, they were beat up, they were left for dead, and a person who in Jewish custom would not typically have gone out of their way to help this person. You could look at it as a black-white issue, if some of us can relate to that. Maybe it was an inner city black person in a bad neighborhood, and a upscale, maybe let's just say a white person, just for the sake of understanding, decided to stop and render help to this poor black person, and they risked their own safety. But they were not just on their way to their mansion in Beverly Hills, but they were actually willing to stop their brand new car, get out with their fur coat on, and help this person on the side of the road, risking their own self, but not just helping with saying, hey, literally taking the person in, dressing their wounds, taking them to a hospital. That's the New Age interpretation of the Good Samaritan story, if you don't mind me kind of putting my own spin on it. And so, how many of us would do that? How many of us would pick up a stranger in a bad neighborhood while we're on our way to work, on our way to our families? We're late for dinner. We're busy on our phones. We see this person on the side of the road. They look like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't stop. This maybe is a setup. And we pull over, and not only do we just check on them, make sure they're okay, and jump back in our car, but we literally pick them up, put them in our car, and we have no disregard for whether they're going to damage our leather seats in the back, or whether they've got Ebola or some contagious disease, or let me get my gloves and my hand sanitizer, or let me call my husband and make sure he's okay with me doing this. And we drive them to the hospital, and we check them in, and we sit with them and wait while the doctors come and evaluate them and help them recover. That would just be incredible. A story that would make the front page news today. But this was a story that Jesus was telling. It was Jesus' way of showing his disciples that this is the type of love that God wants us to have. In other words, what he was saying is that our neighbor is not just literally the person we know, but it's anyone who's in need of help. This is godly love. This is the type of love that God showed us. This is the type of love as Christians and believers that we're to show to one another. 1 Corinthians 13:4 and 7 tells us that love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It doesn't brag or boast. Paul writes and tells us love is not arrogant. Love is not indecent. Love is not easily taken away, but rather love is hope. Galatians 5:14 tells us that love is the fulfillment of law. That's what the apostles Paul and James was teaching us. That not only is it good, but it's a mandate. It's part of who we are. It's the fabric of being a chosen son or daughter of God. We must hold ourselves accordingly. We must show the world that we're new creatures. What better way to show it than through our love? Not through our scolding, not through our judgments, not through our finger pointing, not through our drawing a line in the sand, but rather through our actions, rather through our language, rather through our behavior, rather through how we love. What are we doing? Are we who we say we are? Do we give as much as we ask for? Do we give away as much as we receive? Do we spend as much time in the hospitals as we do in the church house? Do we spend as much time with our families as we do with our friends? Who are we? Are we truly sons and daughters of God? Or is this just lip service? 1 John 4:19-21 tells us that loving one another proves that we love God. If we have God's nature, then how can we not show our love? How can we hate our brother? How can we ignore? We think of hate as being a truly negative word. A form of hate could be ignoring someone, not responding to someone's need. How can we say we love God? How can we be of God's nature if we're ignoring our brother? If we don't have brotherly love? If we're not showing our love? How can we say we love God whom we don't see, but rather we're ignoring the elephant in the room? We're ignoring the neighbor next door. We're ignoring our brother across the street. We're ignoring our coworker. God is love. And if we are of God, then we share that love. And if we share that love, we show it in what we do.